Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order, July 16th, 2026 meeting of the Planning Board. First item on our agenda is to get a couple of alternates to sit, Mr. Perry and Logan Roy, for Tony Coviello and Karen Conard, respectively.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We have approval of the minutes of June 18th, 2026.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm going to read it once. The request of Reagan Electric Co. Inc. as owner and Chinburg Development as applicant for property at 94 Langdon Street and 98 Cornwall, requesting site plan review approval, has been withdrawn, so that will not be on our agenda this evening. We do have a public hearing. Our procedure for public hearings is that there will be a presentation by the proponent, followed by questions by planning board members, then public comment, up to 3 sessions. There's a first session of up to 3 minutes, which is oral comment only, a second session of up to 5 minutes where you can make a presentation if you need to, and a third round, if needed, will be another 5 minutes oral presentation only. If you wish to speak in the second or third rounds, you must speak in the preceding round. After that, the public hearing is closed and the board deliberates. We have a request of Griffin Road Realty LLC as owner for property located at 218 Griffin Road, requesting a wetland conditional use permit from section 1010-1750 for the construction of a new mobile home trailer loading dock, new security fencing, gates, added ADA accessible parking spaces. The project includes removing existing asphalt in the loading dock area and replacing the concrete and installation with a new chain link fence, all within existing impervious areas. This project proposes a permanent impact of approximately 5,181 square feet within the 100-foot wetland buffer. The property is on Assessor's Map 263, Lot 1-5, and is in the industrial district. Who is here to present this application?
Good evening, Drew Olechowski with Haley Ward, representing the applicant CCB Inc. So thank you for the introduction. Again, the project is located at 218 Griffin Road. The site is currently occupied by an existing FedEx distribution facility. We are here tonight seeking a wetland conditional use permit for the installation of a concrete pad, as well as a new chain link fence, both within the City of Portsmouth 100-foot wetland buffer. The reasoning for this project is FedEx is looking to revise their scheme in which they load packages onto the delivery trucks. With this new scheme, there will be a mobile loading dock trailer, which will be temporary, and it will back up to the existing building. This dock will have several bays on it, which the delivery trucks will back it up into, and the packages will be loaded on the trucks from there. Because these delivery trucks will be parked there for longer periods of time, it was necessary to replace the existing asphalt in this area with concrete just to better withstand the heavy trucks in that area. So as it was mentioned, the concrete pad is located within an entirely impervious area. Again, we're just replacing asphalt with concrete to help provide more strength. The other improvements for the project are fairly minor. As mentioned, there's a new chain link fence, some additional gates and signage to improve security, but overall it's a fairly straightforward process. Last month we did go before the Conservation Commission and received a favorable recommendation. There were a few conditions of approval which we were able to address without any issue. So with that, we feel that we have addressed all of the standards of the wetland conditional use permit, so I would look forward to hearing the board's comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant?
Could you explain the difference in the amount of square footage that you're actually impacting in this plan versus what the Conservation Commission actually approved? I believe it's about 428 square feet difference.
Yes, so the difference was the additional area that will be saw cutting. You can see on the plan just to the north, or that upper section of the blue area. We felt we needed to replace a bit extra pavement area just to naturally slope down into that concrete pad versus having an awkward lip there. So that was the difference.
All right, so it's actually already asphalt now and you're just adding more.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Is the loading dock going to be covered?
It will be, yes.
Is that the roof overhang that is the dash line? Or is that just the saw cut?
Nope, that's the saw cut line. The dock is that thicker gray block at the bottom.
So just the dock will be covered, or will the truck,
Just
mobile,
the dock.
so the mobile loading dock won't be. It'll just be a truck parked on the concrete.
That's correct.
Is that a hand up?
I had the same question, but that's not a handout.
If you have this answer, great. If not, no problem. Is this a temporary solution or a longer-term solution for FedEx?
It's the long-term solution.
So I know you had an initial plan that had quite a lot more tractor-trailer parking. You don't need that anymore?
FedEx was very interested in taking care of this initial aspect of the project as soon as they possibly could, and we knew that adding those additional trailer parking spaces would be a much lengthier review process. So at the moment, we're not proposing those. We are just going with this one aspect. In the future, there might be the trailer spaces added, but at this point, we are not proposing those.
Okay, so this may not be a long-term solution.
The loading pad itself is a permanent fixture to the site, but they were just saying there might be more to come in the future.
Okay. Put that hand down. Yes, Logan.
Just a question on the Conservation Commission notes you mentioned. I think the plans that we have in our packet are the same ones presented to them, but the Concom did have a couple of requests for additions to that plan. Is your intention to revise this before submitting for a building permit, or should we have an updated plan right now already?
We did address all of their conditions,
Okay, is the
and I'm
plan
not sure which plan you're looking at, but we did
dated
address those.
4/17, right? The letter from the Concom is dated June something. Or to the point, I couldn't find any of the notes they requested on the plan, so I figured I would just check the date to make this simpler.
We did not add a revision block after the Concom submission, but I can assure you we did address all of their comments, and that was the plan that was submitted. I'm curious which notes you might be
Yeah, so
referencing.
specifically there's a note about noting on the plan that no construction, I guess numbers 4, I suppose number 4 would be probably the most important one there, the construction materials being left on site. And then notes 2 and 3, the wetland delineation stamped by a wetland scientist delineating the vegetative buffer strip. Is there an update I'm missing somewhere?
Again, I can check with planning on that because I know we did address all of those comments. I'm not sure why that's not showing up on this plan set.
Okay, yeah, I mean, they seem like very simple. They're not like changes to your design, right? Just
Yeah,
notes.
exactly. It was just minor notes about erosion control, and we were fine with adding all of those.
Okay, yeah, I assume we can make that continued condition.
So to be clear, it's not just being fine. You've agreed to those notes, and they will be on the plan.
That's correct.
That's finalized, okay.
Okay, yeah, understood. That answers my question.
Any other questions? If there are no other questions, thank you very much. I'm going to open the public hearing. Is anybody here or on Zoom wishes to speak to, for, or against this application? Anybody on Zoom?
No, there's one person, but they haven't raised their hand.
If you're on Zoom and wish to speak, raise your hand virtually. And if not, time's running out. I'm going to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board vote to find that the conditional use permit application meets the requirements set forth in section 101750 of the ordinance and adopt the findings of facts as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
I will motion to the board to vote to grant the conditional use permit with the conditions outlined in the staff memo.
I'll second.
And with the change that the applicant acknowledged getting those notes on the plan.
Could we consider that as presented? That was part of, I mean, during the presentation, it was
As he
agreed to?
presented, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Understood.
Understood, as presented.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We have a preliminary conceptual consultation, which is not a public hearing, for the request of St. Nicholas Creek Orthodox Church as owner for property located at 0 Lafayette Road, requesting preliminary conceptual consultation for the construction of an 11,200 square foot 15-unit apartment building with associated site improvements. This property is on Assessor's Map, Lot 229, Lot 6A, and lies within the Gateway 1, not the Single Residence B district. Who's here to present this application? For this discussion, rather.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Joe Coronati. I'm with Jones and Beach Engineers, representing Martini Northern. We have Ben in the audience from Martini Northern. They have this property under agreement. This property is located on Ledgewood Drive. It's owned by the Greek Orthodox Church. It's been a existing lot of record for many years. It's just been sitting on Ledgewood Drive. It's a wooded parcel. There's no structures on it. There's basically an old path running through it. And the site is in the Gateway Corridor, G1 zone. So they're proposing a 15-unit apartment building, one building, associated parking under the building for the residents, and then visitor parking out back. This is obviously just a conceptual discussion. We don't have a lot of detail on these plans. There'll be much more when we come back to you. We have been to a preliminary TAC meeting on this. We got a lot of good feedback from the technical side of this that we'll have to work through. Here tonight, we're really just looking for your initial input, and if you have any questions that we can answer, and just to present the project in front of you. And so it's I guess I'll only add a couple more things. When you're looking at the building, you'll see the parking under the garages on the left side. There's that hatched area on the outer limits of the building. That hatching area will turn into things like stairways, elevator, mechanical rooms, storage for the residents. So we'll have more detail. For that, it'll take up some of those parking spaces, so there will be a few less parking spaces when we come back. We have to add, excuse me, ADA spaces, things like that. That'll all be detailed. Then the building will be 2 floors above the parking, so it'll be a 3-story building. And we're showing, I guess, the dumpster locations, the stormwater location. We do have a small wetland on the property, the lower right corner. The wetland's smaller than is required to have setbacks from it. And so there are no setbacks to it. We also don't expect, we will not have any impact in that wetland either with this development. We know that wouldn't be something anybody would look favorably upon from the city or the state. So we'll be staying out of that wetland. We are aware there's when the restaurant business tour was in front of you for additional units, they do have some proposed sidewalk being constructed in front of this, and we will be showing that on the plans in the future, as well as how we would tie into that for our access if needed. And I believe, from my understanding, that the cul-de-sac will remain at the end of Ledgewood. And so that's, I guess that's all I have. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? Comments? Andrew?
I think it's a generally non-offensive project, and it looks like it could fit in quite well. I know that TAC will ask you about fire truck access. Is there a proposed turnaround or anything to that extent on this site, or do you need one?
We will be working with the fire department. We're so close to the Ledgewood that access from the roadway, I think could easily be obtained from the road, and they might not want to turn in and get that close to a building in an emergency situation, but we will work through that to see if we have to provide a turnaround. It seems just such a small site to add a full truck turnaround on, that I think a lot of them will, maybe even access from the cul-de-sac might be more useful, where trucks can turn around in that area, and delivery trucks, everything like that, and then walk up to the front might be
Yeah, I would
useful
agree.
as well.
It's just a consideration.
Right.
My second question or comment would be adding some generous and appropriate plantings in the front of this building. I know it's a commercial corridor, but always nice to have some buffer between the road and the building when possible. And the third comment is just about lighting. We want to keep this building safe, and that's a pretty dark turnaround in the middle of the night, so some appropriate lighting to accompany the building or within compliance of being dark sky compliant or whatever it is in that specific zone would be a nice thing to do.
Yes, I would agree on all that. There are times the ball fields will be lit up, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Those lights are very close in a couple places to this, but
Oh, Logan?
I had a couple questions about access to the site, and this might actually tie into what the previous question about fire trucks. Is there an intent to tie in the parking lot you're showing here with the existing parking for the church? Would you be able to just simply drive through to that larger parking lot on the other side?
no, the church property is actually sort of kitty corner. They connect basically at I believe it like the back right corner. It's like they connect at a point, so we would not be connecting to any of their development or
Okay,
their
so that
site.
would be basically through the stormwater feature, right, where you're showing here? So that wouldn't really work?
Oh, yes, we wouldn't, we're not anticipating going onto that property at all.
Okay, yeah, understood. So then my secondary question would be, my dog and I are very frequent users of the kind of informal pathway that goes through this little
Yeah.
forest right now. I would assume a lot of people going to the school. For what it's worth, we pick up a lot of trash, so I feel like we're useful. But, when you've got an existing pathway and then some development goes in, often people are very confused at where to go. Is there an intent, does that tie in with your previous statement about the sidewalk, or is there an intent to make this walkable to the high school? Again, if it's right by the school, I would think people would want to be able to walk, people with kids, directly to the school. Is that an intent to tie that in as well?
Right, the proposed improvements by the Tor restaurant, oops, I don't know if this,
If you hold the top button, it should,
All right.
there you go.
the Tor restaurant proposal includes bringing a new sidewalk all the way down this side of the property and then into the school as a more formal, actual, wide, flat sidewalk that they can walk. If that, for some reason, doesn't happen, I think we could figure out a way to continue the trail, at least from our building, over to the school in the meantime.
Yeah, I would just encourage that because I think a lot of people use that, and it probably would be a benefit to the development, I would assume. That's it for me.
Is that existing trail on your property?
It cuts right through the property.
That's right through there.
It's,
So Tor is proposing to make improvements just off of your property,
correct.
negating the need for that.
I believe it was part of their public
Part of their,
realm.
part of their
approval
approval.
we
They're
did for
doing
Part of
a
the
8-foot wide
approval.
multi-use path to connect
Yeah,
to the high school. So that's gonna happen.
it's gonna happen?
Yep. Yes, it's part of their approval.
Hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet, but
Yeah.
it's
I mean, it'll happen if they build the project.
right.
Yeah.
I applaud the parking under the building. That's a great idea. To the extent you don't have to put in that much surface parking to the rear and preserve some of the forest, that would be nice. But can you describe the forest? Is it mostly mature trees, or maybe Logan knows if he walks through there with his dog all the time?
Yeah, I'd say it is mostly mature hardwoods, from what I recall. Been a little bit since I've been in there, but yeah, it's mostly mature. We would propose, or will be proposing a berm and a planting plan for this back edge, which is something that I think Ben has been talking to the abutters about.
That's a good idea to talk to them, and this is not a requirement, just a suggestion, as you know. But if there's a mature forest in this area, and there won't be much of it left, rather than just clear the lot and grub the entire thing. If you can save some of it, that would be a benefit. My way of thinking anyway. Bill?
What's the business proposition?
Sorry,
What's the business proposition? Who's gonna,
these would be apartments owned by Martini Northern.
owned by,
Martini Northern would be the,
and the rental
yes,
at market?
yes.
When you're designing the entrance to the driveway, it is going to be sort of so catty-corner to that back entrance to Tor, which will be a fairly main entrance when that's complete. So just paying attention to and looking at whatever complications, because, you know, there's a lot of people already going in and out that to the other residential units. I just want to make sure that when you're planning that, you think about all the traffic that might go through there, and people can speed through there a lot. So if we're going to have kids and whatnot walking on the sidewalks and whatnot, just be conscientious of that, please.
Just very briefly to voice my support for what we're seeing here. It makes great sense to me. I just want to echo the same comments that you've had that were made about the trees. The more of the mature trees you could save in a selective way, the better. That would be my only comment tonight. Other than that, I also appreciate the parking beneath. I think that's wonderful.
My only other comment is an aesthetic one, and I know it will tie into your access, but coming in the driveway and looking straight at dumpsters might not be the most aesthetic thing for the residents. So if you can, just something to think about. You got to get the trash trucks in there, I know, but
We will take a look at that, see what we can do to, how we can modify that if possible. Because I think they would be screened, obviously, but I understand the,
yeah, dumpster screening isn't usually the most beautiful.
right. Step up, slightly
First
step up
impression,
from the
so to
dumpster.
speak.
Yes,
Just one last thing. There will likely be a significant amount of package deliveries here, assuming there's a space dedicated for that activity as well.
looks like a good idea.
Yeah, looks great.
Any other comments or?
Just
Yes.
one last one. Is this stormwater feature only servicing this property and will not service the Greek Church at all?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing you with more information.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is under City Council referral. I think it's actually a request of the applicant directly to the planning board. Request of Banfield Realty LLC as owner for property at 375 Banfield Road, requesting to be rezoned from Industrial 1 to Gateway Neighborhood Business, G1. Excuse me, this property is on Assessor's Map 266, lots 7 and 7-1. Who's here to discuss this application or this proposal? And did the board get the PDF of the PowerPoint earlier today? Did you get a chance to look at it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello, members of the board. My name is Chris Kelly. I'm an attorney with Hinckley Allen in Manchester. I represent the property owner and the applicant of the subject property, Banfield Realty LLC and Green Valley Realty LLC. Also with me tonight, representing the applicant are Rob Graham, the project leader, and Adam Worrell from Procon. We're before you tonight to ask this board to vote to recommend to the Portsmouth City Council our proposal for a zoning amendment that would rezone tax map 266, lot 7 and lot 7-1 from industrial I to Gateway Corridor G1. Adam will be up next to provide the specifics and vision for our application and request, but I had one initial point that I'd like to share with this board. As you may know, this property is the subject of some complex litigation related to its environmental condition. I'd note the applicant has taken significant steps already to get this property cleaned up, but the relevance of this litigation to what we're doing tonight involves a timing issue that we think this board should be aware of. The litigation is at something of a standstill until there's clarity around the likely future use of the property. I'm happy to go into as much detail as I'm able to about that litigation, but basically, until we have a sense of the likely future use, the parties to the litigation don't have the information that they need to appropriately scope out the parameters of potential settlement terms. So time is of the essence as it relates to this request. We view this application as an important step that needs to happen before we're able to resolve the environmental litigation and then clean the property up and ultimately put the property to a use that helps the city achieve its master plan goals, as well as to provide a beneficial project for the city as a whole. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Morrill, unless there's any questions for me.
One question about the litigation, and maybe the city councilor knows this and I don't. Still pending litigation. Is the city a party to that pending litigation?
It is still pending litigation. The city has been released and the court has accepted their release, but there still is active litigation between the remaining parties.
Okay. And it relates in part to the cleanup and the use of the property, future use of the property.
It generally relates to the cleanup of the property and who will bear sort of the responsibility and cost and expense of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, it was publicly announced at our Monday night meeting that we were released from that litigation.
I just wanted it clear here. So.
Thank you very much. My name's Adam Morrill, as Chris had mentioned. I'm with Procon, and I represent the architecture firm working with Rob and the other applicants on this project. So I appreciate you having the slide up today, and I just want to sort of preface this by saying we do include later in this slide, and it was part of the original application, sort of a concept study of what a potential zoning change would put forth for a potential project density or layout, just to sort of illustrate what could be potential with that rezoning. But again, that's not the subject of tonight's process, but just to put a little bit of clarity into what this could bring to fruition. So here we have our introduction slide, and it really comes down to why the site was selected for potential rezoning. In Portsmouth, you know, there's the cluster of larger sites that are located proximate to employment opportunities, are within a zone that doesn't necessarily have restrictions on lot size or the overall character of the city center, locations that are proximate to public transportation, jobs, as well as the need for housing opportunity and compatible adjacencies. So that was one of the major reasons why this site seemed to make a lot of sense for potential rezoning to the G1 Gateway Corridor District. If you could switch to the next slide, we can start to review some of those pieces in a little more detail. On this slide, this is really a context plan of the existing conditions of the neighborhood and adjacent sites. In blue, you'll see the subject parcel, 375 Banfield Road. Items A are the community campus. You'll see the community campus center as well as its field to the east. To the north of the property is the St. Patrick's Academy private school. Across the street, across Banfield Road, is the Camp Seaweed Girl Scout complex. As we go further to the west, you'll see the New Hampshire Seacoast Greenway Trail, the rail trail running through the left-hand side of that plan. And then as you start to look at the dots, the F dots, you'll notice that single family or residential uses are located on both sides of Banfield Road, both within the residential districts as well as in the industrial districts neighboring the property. As we work our way to the right-hand side of the plan, you'll start to see the wetland delineation. So you can see that there's some, in this zone, some major restrictions on developable areas within the space. And as we flip forward to the concept plan, you'll see how we responsibly can create development without impacting those wetlands. Next slide, please. And so there's three major pillars on why gateway zoning is being requested. Number one is the opportunity to create diverse housing opportunities, which also includes workforce housing, which is one of the bonus incentives within the gateway district. Obviously, housing is not a allowable use within the industrial zone. Next is the opportunities that this site has specific to it, connectivity to the Portsmouth Community Campus, recreation opportunities, natural resource protection districts immediately adjacent to the parcel, as well as the Seacoast Trail. There's a lot of opportunity here to create a parcel that, instead of being a private industrial complex, is a better suit for that connectivity and open space improvement. And last, as we go through the plan, we believe that Gateway Corridor would provide a better land use transition from the existing industrial based on the current use of adjacent properties, including the St. Patrick's Academy, as well as the other single-family homes within the industrial district. And you can jump ahead to the next slide, please, as well. So I'm sure you're all quite familiar with the draft master plan, so I won't belabor the point. But we did reference that significantly while we were contemplating and studying different opportunities for this site. The big things that I really want to highlight are the goals of the master plan, which include invest in quality of place, which includes those recreation trails, other opportunities to improve the quality of life within the community, retain and create diverse housing, promote fiscally responsible development, cultivate our economy, and protect core identity. As you look at the right-hand side of this screen, some of the key takeaways in that draft study were further study of the gateway districts, potential expansions and refinements within that zone. I believe in your memo it was also noted that the general area just to the east of Banfield Road was noted as a specific opportunity zone. While this parcel is not immediately within that zone of influence, it is adjacent to it. And hopefully, as we discuss this tonight, you'll see the opportunity and the existing land use in there is a compatible match for that goal. The upper right-hand slide, we have a little star that indicates a subject parcel, and that lands immediately on a bike priority connector opportunity under the transit and bike incentives or objectives of the master plan. And then the proposed concept that we have would meet potentially two of the housing styles that are included in the balanced growth of the community, including the market rate large multifamily and mixed income and affordable housing. Next slide, please. And so we really have these six priority objectives of this, as well as the goals that those align to on the master plan. Providing housing supply and choice, providing workforce housing, creating a gateway corridor in this zone that's a better land use pattern relative to the existing context and the actual use of the Banfield Road community. The mobility and connectivity. Through the next slides, you'll see the proximity to public transit, bike path opportunities, recreation trail opportunities to reduce the dependency on automobiles, as well as public realm and open space improvements, creating buffers and preservation of those wetland spaces and access to recreation. And again, to reiterate the point, this is a rezoning request tonight, and the full site plan technical review would still be preserved, assuming a favorable recommendation of this rezoning request. Next slide, please. So here's a zoning and land use diagram. Again, the blue subject parcel is located at the center of the map. Immediately to the east is a community campus, St. Andrews, and the Girl Scout complex. As you start to look at this plan and some of the overlays, the green parcels that are highlighted along Banfield Road are parcels within the industrial district that are currently single-family residences. A few of those do have fabrication garages in the rear, but they do operate as single-family residences. And so you'll see that this parcel is surrounded on all sides by the municipal district, single-family residences, institutional use for the St. Patrick's Academy. And we've also started to highlight where the coast bus stops are, with the potential for a recreation trail connection to the municipal complex to further support the transit opportunities of potential users in this zone. One other thing that I want to note, while industrial would still remain on the balance of the district, potentially on Heritage Ave, Constitution Ave, and the outer ends of Banfield Road, those current uses are really focused more on those transit routes to Lafayette, Peverly Hill Road, and the outer roads. So this space between those single-family homes and almost all the way down to Heritage really acts as a transition space between the existing single-family residences and districts and what is currently industrial district. So we can jump ahead 2 slides. So this is the conceptual layout of what a gateway zoning could yield on this site. You'll see item A is about 1,000 linear feet of recreation public improvement trail that would wind along the wetland zone, transition across the site with a potential connection. You'll see item B, where's this connection? There's an existing trail off of the community campus that connects up to St. Patrick's, and there would be the opportunity to propose a connection directly to that trail to support pedestrian and bicycle traffic through this site for the greater objectives. In this plan, 2 buildings, approximately 238 units, with we're proposing the opportunity to do parking below those. One of those buildings. We're really looking at the existing grading of this site. As you're on the north side of the site, the grade's higher, and then it starts to transition lower to the wetlands. So we're trying to maximize the efficiency of that grading, limit our impacts on those wetlands. You can see in this concept, we'd really have sort of that building outside of those furthest buffers from the wetlands, and still have a site that is feasibly developable under the parameters of a gateway district. Next slide. And to really summarize, there's really 3 main pieces of this, if worth noting. We believe that gateway zoning aligns with the master plan goals of the community of the city of Portsmouth, provides a better long-term planning outcome than the industrial district would currently provide. And we also believe that it's beneficial that this reserves the full site plan approval process, assuming a favorable outcome of the rezoning. And so with that, we're happy to answer any questions or comments that you have on this concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Paul.
The letter from Chris Kelly mentions a previously approved industrial concept for this parcel. Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah. So previously there was a approved industrial concept. I believe it received approval in 2023, 2022, and on site currently there's been some land clearing and some remediation efforts on the site. But that's about as much as I know about that concept. If you have any specific questions, we may be able to answer those, but there was another industrial concept that was approved for this site.
Do we know if that's still,
Well, what's that, I mean,
it's been continued, or they've been granted
they
extensions
were granted
on that?
permits for it to vest the site plan approval.
Okay.
I don't know the status of what work's been done since then, but I know they demolished the buildings and done some grading and obviously remediation, but.
With respect to the contamination on the property, for the purposes of your initial plans, are you just assuming, for the sake of discussion, that the site would be clean?
Yes.
So whatever would have to happen, and whoever would be responsible, as the attorney said, that's not part of tonight's discussion. We'll just make that assumption that it would be a clean site.
Correct.
Yes, Andrew?
Are you aware of an April 7th meeting where the St. Patrick's School presented a 2,100 square foot library and it turned into a traffic conversation?
I was not aware of that, no.
That might be some good due diligence for you to look
Yeah.
into before proposing 238 units, because there's currently a pretty bad traffic congestion point on St. Patrick's School, or at St. Patrick's School, and right now the city can't figure out the solution to that, so I don't think another 238 plus residents are going to streamline that problem.
Understandable. And of course, as part of a site plan review process, a full traffic study would be done with potential remediation for that.
Yeah, and I'm giving you that comment now.
Thank you.
Do I understand that your premise is to zone only this site as residential?
So there's currently two sites. Forgive me for not knowing the lot numbers. It is on the cover sheet. There's one lot and a .1
The north
lot.
site.
Yeah. This would be rezoning both.
So it would be just that single site?
It would be rezoning both, sorry.
Okay.
So I'll be a little philosophical maybe or something about, so several of us were on this board when we approved the prior division of the site into two parts and approved a warehousing portion on the north part and left the cleanup on the south part in limbo. At the time, that was not what the TAC had recommended, and it was something of a contentious vote by this board, but it was approved by this board. We're now at a point where we've got almost a year into a master plan process where we've tried to think about the whole city holistically. Certainly housing is a priority, but we haven't yet arrived. We've identified several, I'll call clusters, where we will want to do development activity. This was not in any of them, to my knowledge, to this point. We generally have do not have a favorable view of spot zoning. We generally try to think more strategically about broader areas rather than to zone a single site for whatever purpose. And there's a reason that things are industrial. And one is to protect residents from the kind of inherent environmental implications of certain types of industrial activity, which is certainly a valid consideration at this site. So I understand your urgency of wanting to get forward to understand what the value of the property is for you. But I'm not understanding from a city point of view why we should feel that sense of urgency, given that we're in the middle of a process of reviewing the entire zoning of the city, and we'll look at the area around there and not a spot site singularly. Do you have a different thought on that that could help me understand better why we should do a spot zone for this site?
And so we definitely respect the process of going back to the master plan. I guess the point that I made or was trying to make in my initial remarks is we have the same objective when it comes to the environmental condition of the property. At the same time, we see the current condition of the site being surrounded by uses that are not necessarily industrial, and see and have a hope that the trend for this area, even during that master plan process, will be towards a gateway zone. And so our point being that in order to get the property safe for people to live there, frankly, safe for industrial users there needs to be cleanup. And there's a bottleneck that currently exists with that litigation that until we know what the potential use of this property will be, we won't know how much it costs, and therefore the parties that are part of the litigation, they can't come to terms with one another because that's really the crux of how we would settle it. So I guess what we were asking is to sort of get a jump start or a head start on that process, because that will indeed take time. And that's generally it, is that we're looking for a jump start on that process so we can, ultimately get the property cleaned up and then ultimately get more housing, which I'm sure everyone understands is a need that would be great today if it was served, as opposed to later.
As a baseline, a couple of years ago, we approved a warehouse program. So for the value of the property, would you use that as a baseline thought as to the value of the property?
Do you want to?
We've had no interest.
Yeah, I would say that right now, what I understand about the environmental condition of the property likely could be put towards some industrial uses. As I noted in my initial remarks, the existing owner, the applicant, has had to put in substantial dollars to get it up to an industrial level where some industrial levels of use could be taking place. My understanding is that's not getting us anywhere near where it would need to be based on the current condition of the property. So it's very hard to say what the baseline is.
Go ahead, Doc. You're probably going to say something.
I've been waiting for everyone else to get to talk first. I have had a lot of thoughts about this and been spending a lot of time thinking about it, and I'm the first person to sit up here and say we need more housing, and I've already changed a bunch of industrial areas. With that said, I've kept them to adjacencies to the corridors, and Banfield Road I don't see as a corridor. I have a little bit of heartburn thinking about that narrow little road. I drive down it all the time to go to the post office, and I just don't know if it's currently built and structured to be able to handle this much intensity. So I do agree that putting this out to the master plan and really making a focus, I wouldn't want to just change these two lots. We need to look at the entire roadway. We need to look at all of the lots and really sort of do an analysis as to whether or not what would be appropriate. That's going to take probably more time than the applicant's really going to want, but that's sort of my thought process is with the city as a whole really needs to look at the road as a whole, how narrow it is. There's no room for turn lanes, which I think are what we kind of need to start to think about, especially with all the issues at the school. There's a backup there because, of course, every child there gets brought to school by their parents, so pick up and drop off is just, no one can get up and down the road. So without, having some extra width to that road and trying to figure out a way, I mean, it is all rural directly across the street or single family. It's industrial then surrounded there other than what the municipality already owns. So I guess I have a lot of want to really take a deeper dive into looking at not just these lots, but all of the adjacency lots, how they're used, how will it affect the natural resource protection lots that we have across the street and the rural lots, but really are part of the rail trail and part of all of our infrastructure as far as drainage goes back there. So yeah, I probably have more questions than answers, but I would want us to really, my personal opinion is to step back and really take a look at the whole roadway and all of the lots and see what really, for the long term, makes the best sense for the city. That's just my thoughts.
And Councilman, could I just add a couple notes? Definitely appreciate your thoughts. The only thing that I would add based on that is, first point is we have been in discussions with St. Patrick's on some of these coordinating aspects, the traffic, et cetera. And again, I think like Mr. Morrill said, this is just a recommendation for the rezoning. This is not site plan review approval request, so we certainly would want to address all those things, and we will certainly during that process, but certainly appreciate your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and with all due respect, I think given that the city has been dismissed from that litigation and it's now between your applicant and maybe another party or other parties, plural, the city does not have to yield or oblige to the timelines of your litigation, and therefore I don't feel it's very wise for us to jump ahead to a parcel that we have not yet talked about in our master plan process and spent quite a bit of time on in the rest of the city's master plan endeavor, to just come in, dive in, do this sort of because you asked now, when in reality we've spent quite a bit of time focusing on other areas. And that's not to say that Banfield can never be residential or mixed use in that nature. I understand where the request is coming from, but I don't think it's, like I said, very wise for the city to concentrate efforts on something that does not demand that of us right now. It demands it of you, which I apologize that you're in litigation, but it does not demand that of the city. And by that nature, I don't think we need to be looking at this today.
And certainly respect that. Just if I may, I think our position is we see this as a potential win-win for the city and us. If you know,
How might that be?
So the faster the litigation gets resolved, the faster that property is put to a productive use that would ultimately, serve a city value.
As a point of clarification, the applicant has the right to make the request, and we have the obligation to respond to it. So they have the right to make it.
And I agree with that, definitely. We don't have the obligation to put it at the top of the list when we've otherwise prioritized.
That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, that was my point.
No, certainly respect that. Just trying to show that we feel there's alignment in interest.
The package that you put together, I think you did what you could, trying to work within the confines of the existing regulations, the existing master plan, and what you perceive as, we all perceive as the draft of the future master plan. Gateway, to my way of thinking, under our existing zoning, might have been seen as perhaps your only possible relief valve, but you're just proposing, correct me if I'm wrong, a residential project. Is that correct?
I believe right now, yes, that's the
So if there were some other different zone that allowed that, that would serve your needs, if something like that existed.
Our thought is that we're trying to support the commercial zone that we're adjacent to, that is the gateway.
And, sir, I don't have your name, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Robert Graham, I represent ownership of the property. Our thought was that we understand that we are separated by municipal property to the corridor, which is the Route 1 corridor and the gateway that's out there. But that gateway area there is all commercial. That's where the businesses are. Up Constitution and Heritage Avenue, those are all businesses there. They need the employees. This is where workforce should be. We're trying to do a nice workforce project. Nobody ever really wants workforce projects. This is an opportunity and a piece of land to do something in that zone where people can walk and ride a bike. All of these directives are part of your master plan. We are definitely trying to do a win-win here. It definitely benefits us. The proximity of this property is in the middle of a tremendous amount of commercial uses with all employees who could walk and bike to work. And it's part of this zone in terms of, it's adjacent, I agree, but that is the gateway into this end of Portsmouth, and that is how that entire zone lives and breathes. And nobody can live there. There is no residence there. So we just thought that made sense.
Thank you. There's a difference between a gateway, I think in the sense you're using it, and gateway in our zoning. And the reason I see it as more of a difficult fit, our gateway zone was intended to be more of a mixed-use, walkable nodes type of places, and not just, and I'm not demeaning a residential project with workforce housing. I think it's fair to say this board wants that. So you're not looking at 9 people who don't want workforce housing. It's quite the reverse. The city, unless it's been extinguished, the city has an easement through this property to that back. Is that still the case?
It is.
Given the traffic condition on Banfield Road, I'd encourage you to explore maybe making a formal connection to the east, which would involve discussions with the city council.
Well, we have discussed that prior. They have indicated the amicability. That's actually in our concept tonight that we're showing you to connect through over
Not just as a path, but as a road.
It is a road and a path. We want to explore both of those things. That's the connection to the corridor.
My point is, from an engineering perspective, if you could have an additional traffic route going to the east through this connection, you're taking a lot of heat off Banfield Road. It makes this project a lot more viable, in my mind.
I'm agreeing with you. It's on the plan.
But there's not a full road once you get to city property, so.
It is. It connects to the city campus property.
It's item B, proposed connections to community campus. If you zoom in a little bit, you'll see that there's the recreation trail, which is otherwise noted as A, but you'll also see the extension of the drive in front of the sort of the horizontal bar building extending.
So you would see it as a full road connection?
Exploring that opportunity.
I mean, obviously, this is not binding tonight, but for conversation purposes.
That's correct. That'd be the goal. Yes.
I'm just trying to explore this. I mean, given what the attorney said in terms of, it seems to me your additional threshold is what you have for zoning, and the amount of cleanup that would be required for industrial is far less than what would be required for residential. So it seems that's your base threshold that why not have a conversation that is your base? It may not be economically viable, so it's not your ultimate plan. But it seems like you've got a step beyond that, and with people that aren't in this room. So that
Chairman, someone over here that wanted to speak.
Oh, I was just curious where the road would come out at community campus, because that would be a whole different traffic issue, because there's a child care center there, and
the details
there's some weird, like, where you go into the parking at community campus and getting around the building is already a sharp, dangerous turn. So I wasn't sure where it would come in. That was it.
Certainly, and I think like Adam was speaking to, it's at a conceptual level yet. There's a lot of dominoes that would need to fall before we would know what even the layout would be. We don't have property rights past where we showed on our plan, which is why it's not shown as the connector. So there's that, but that certainly would go before the council and would need to receive approval, and all those things would certainly need to be addressed. And Mr. Chairman, just getting back to your question related to the baselining and why don't we have those discussions now, I would say, yes, it's a situation where we are incredibly concerned with holding the bag. If, we use that as the baseline, and really what's going to happen here in this property is something that's going to require multitudes of millions of dollars more than that baseline to ultimately construct and get back our investment. So that's why we don't really see going and to the negotiating table with an industrial baseline as really even a viable economic consideration.
Okay, so industry is not viable, given the status of the site.
I think that from our perspective, it does not when you factor in the environmental liabilities that are present.
Okay.
Chairman,
Yes.
if I could, I want to encourage continued creativity with this site. It's the uniqueness of it in so many ways, not just its size. It's a massive site. You know, its history obviously is very challenging. Banfield is a challenge no matter what the use is going to be on that site. There could be an industrial use. I understand that it's not viable right now, but there could be situations on these sites that intensify Banfield. I mean, the future will hold development on these sites, all of them, eventually. There's no question. But I think we keep this discussion open. The idea of workforce housing here is very exciting to me. I understand that the term gateway, you question the term gateway, as do I. On the planning department's own webpage, I mean, the city council adopted gateway zoning amendments to increase the supply and diversity of housing stock in the city. Period. There's more, but that's a statement. That was a reason for gateway zoning amendments. So the request, I think the request is valid to continue to consider. I understand there's challenges, but.
No, I hear you, and that's why we're having the conversation. And even though we have an obligation, I think it's a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
I don't personally like the site plan, but that's a separate issue altogether. The idea of having workforce housing out here on a clean site, which cleans up the site and provides workforce housing, that's a win-win for
Yep.
the gentleman sitting there as well as the city. I understand that. Tying into that, I've been heavily engaged, as most of us have, with the conversations of the master plan update, and absent this information, just looking with base information as we do in a non-biased way, looking at what the land can support, where the roads are, where the streams are, where everything is. This site didn't rise up to the top of that pile. So the comments that my fellow members are making are quite valid. As is Joe's comment, how do we keep the conversation going? We do need to make a recommendation, which can either be further study, whether they're, a full connection out to the east through the city's property. There's a lot of details that would have to be figured out, even in conceptual form, and I have no idea where the council is on something like that, how they might react to it. But the board, how does the board feel? Do you guys want to try to make a decision on this tonight, or do you want to think about it further? Yeah,
I don't know
first
if it's
Brian,
ready
then
for a
Bill.
motion.
First Brian, then Bill.
I just wanted to mention, I know there were a number of lots in this area that we had put on kind of a list and sort of held in abeyance until the master plan was being finalized. That was from the October meeting, I think. Would it be worthwhile simply adding this to that list of things we are definitely considering and taking action all at once? I know we discussed that, I think, last month, that maybe we would possibly wait a little too long on those anyway, but add it to the list of things to look at holistically.
That's one idea, yeah. Yes, Bill.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we not approve or disapprove this item at the moment, that we hold it in abeyance until we can consider it in the context of the master plan.
I think that, wait, before, I've got a technical problem with that motion. If you bring up the zoning ordinance, we are obligated to make a recommendation based on the applicant's request. So we can't, if you feel there's information needed to make a decision, that's different. And I think the master plan provides guidance, it doesn't provide specific direction. So I'm troubled by holding it up for that. That's why I jumped in before there was a second, I think. It's right at the first part of the zoning ordinance.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, certainly we want to resolve this in the best way we can. If there are suggestions about a potential path forward where we keep the conversation going, but we have some idea from this board what that direction might be that would lead to a potential multifamily housing use, we're certainly open to that, and we can come back so we don't sort of have undue pressure on you, if that's of any assistance.
We could ask the, now I'm going to get into the master plan, we could ask the master plan consultants to consider another zone which would allow multifamily.
I was gonna ask, is there another zone that would work for them to move forward with a residential project like this? Maybe not, it doesn't seem to be a gateway zone, but something else. But I also don't want to have a bunch of spot zones, so I don't want it to be completely different from everything around it. So, they sell the property and someone wants to do something else, but it's zoned for.
That's one of the reasons why Gateway troubles me a little bit, because Gateway is a very wide door for a number of uses, well beyond what they're proposing. Frank?
I do just want to say I work very close to this site. I drive on Banfield pretty often too, so I'm sympathetic to the idea of getting workforce housing here. If you could get it going to Campus Drive, West Road, I work very close to there, and it would add a lot of traffic, but it would add a lot of options as well, so I'm sympathetic to that. But the core issue here seems to be that we would be spot zoning something, and that's generally poor practice, and I'm very hesitant to really do that just for this site.
Understood. Could I suggest maybe an option would be to schedule a meeting with TRC or someone or the master planning consultants who we could then work with and sort of get into the weeds on what zoning might work here to accomplish our needs, and then also allay your concerns?
Well, the master plan consultant's constrained by a budget and a scope of work. If you were to propose a different zoning amendment with zoning tailored to what you're proposing, that could be looked at for sure. And I know I would consider it. I think is consensus of the board that you would consider something like that? Wait a second. Is that we can either act on your request or you can change your request.
May I speak?
Sure.
Mr. Graham, real quick.
Do we need a break?
I do.
Why don't we,
8 o'clock.
It happens from time to time. I drink too much water.
5 minutes? 5 minutes?
so we have a 5-minute break? Let's have a 5-minute break.
Chairman, oh, excuse me.
The thumbs up was for the guy behind you.
Because he has to start
Now
the
we're,
thing.
call the meeting back to order. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After the break and during the break, proposal I think we would like to make at this point is to ask the board to consider the second option on the staff memo, which is to include the Banfield Road corridor in the master plan for consideration.
Okay. So we'll consider that a modified, slightly modified request. And the board can either act on that tonight or it could continue it to next month. Yes, Bill?
I'm not sure what it means. We have a number of pieces of property in that quadrant that are kind of on a wish list. And does this mean that we add that to the ones that are in that quadrant?
I'm just reading the specific, rereading it, so I refresh my recollection. This is different. This is just changing from industrial to Gateway Neighborhood G1, adding it to the master plan to get feedback from them.
But it's also as part of the broader review of Banfield Road corridor,
Right.
which I think is important.
So, yeah, so if the question is, do we want as part of the master plan to do a broad review of the Banfield Road corridor, the answer would be yes.
My answer is yes. I don't know about anyone else.
Like, just strictly in terms of like reviewing it, right?
To see whether or not it's appropriate, right?
So back to my point earlier, technically, we could ask the master plan consultant to consider it in this regard, assuming they felt it falls within their scope, which it probably does. They could come back and make a recommendation. We are still obligated to make a recommendation to council, but it could be pending receipt of this information, yes.
I like this direction for a number of reasons. One is I'm doing very much a 180 on my consideration for this lot. I'm being convinced that, we have a housing problem. We don't have an industrial problem. And the amount of lots on Banfield, so when we talk about, spot zoning, sure, no one wants to do that. But what's being proposed now is a greater conversation. I could be convinced that we might want to rezone all the way up this side. There are several other large lots on this side of Banfield we could do this all the way up. And literally, with the amount of property on this side of town, it takes a massive bite out of our housing problem. Yes, Banfield Road is limited, but we can't be afraid of the road. I mean, traffic can be dealt with. It can be patterned. It can be, the road can be changed, right? It's actually, it's not a small road already. There are some changes that could be made, but there are massive tracts of land out here that this could be a very good thing.
I'm all for expanding the area looked at. I can say if we make a whole bunch of residential out there, that becomes traffic that competes at the same time of day, as opposed to mixed use. So there is a big difference there from a traffic perspective. But that's why I mentioned the additional road connection possibility. That's another possible relief valve.
Yeah.
Beyond a rezoning request. So.
In your want for us to basically, it's a city council referral, can we make a motion to vote that our recommendation back to city council is that this request be put to the master planning process as consideration as a broader view of the Banfield Road corridor?
I'd revise that slightly to say we recommend that it go as Peter outlined it for the broader view. And pending receipt of that, then we'll make a recommendation to council.
Right, so you don't want us to actually make a recommendation. I was caught on the fact that I thought you were trying to get us to actually give an answer to council any direction that we go, and that's why.
No, we are obligated to do that, but it can be, what I'm hearing the board, I'm not seeing any shaking of heads, but I'm not seeing a lot of nodding of heads either. So if the board wishes to go this way, that is a way that would work.
So the recommendation
motion?
would be kind of delayed a little bit until we get some feedback from that consultant.
The recommendation would be to make a recommendation to council pending receipt of further information from the master plan consultant on this issue.
Okay.
I too am, you say you don't see a lot of nodding or shaking of head. Is there, are we, in our recommendation, is there a way to suggest, I guess we're not ready to, so our support or not for this idea, not for the specific idea as presented, but the idea of housing in this area? I guess that's jumping the gun, isn't it?
Well, to pick up on that, I don't support the specificity of the suggestion to go to Gateway, but I know our consultants aren't going to be bound by that.
Yeah.
So I'm not troubled by that.
Just to revise my rather pointed comments from earlier, there's kind of an uphill battle here. The city was dismissed from the lawsuit, so your urgency and litigation is no longer our consideration. Number two, the last residential project that was proposed on Banfield Road, in this capacity at least, was at 225 Banfield Road. It was 60 units, got shut down. Third, there's already a traffic problem here. We know that. It would be unwise, again, to move forward with this, knowing that problem exists. Fourth, I can, in some capacity, see more housing on Banfield Road. I'm not saying no to that by any stretch of the imagination, and I actually think that if you look at 70 Constitution Avenue, which is the Viridian Apartments, it's 95 units. That was a foreign idea when it was proposed in 2015, and by 2017 and today, people live there enjoyably, and that's a beautiful mixed-use center. So I agree to propose this and push it forward or recommend it to council to then incorporate into the master plan process is the only answer, in my opinion. The master plan consultant, as well as the master plan committee, as well as the general public then will have a much better and more comprehensive ability to provide insight, public comment, and work through some of these pain points and thresholds so that we can arrive at a much cleaner presentation down the road. What that does not do is give these guys any sort of finite timing. So that's my opinion, that it's best in the master plan. Unfortunately, our master plan probably will not be done until December. So buckle up.
I think I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we vote to refer the request from Banfield Realty LLC to rezone 375 Banfield Road from industrial to possibly Gateway 1 to the master planning process for consideration as part of the broader review of the Banfield Road corridor so that the planning board can then make a recommendation to city council.
Second.
Discussion.
Can I comment on her motion?
That's why we have discussion.
Yep.
Do we want to include Gateway or just say?
I said possibly Gateway.
Just, do you want to just say rezone it?
That was an important word I added in there.
Yeah, but do you want to say Gateway at all, is my question.
Well, that was their request, so we're sending it as the request to possibly be there,
Okay.
but let's get the feedback and look at the broader view, and let's get all this data that we're all dying to have.
Great.
Further discussion.
I think it encompassed it all, in my personal opinion.
Sorry, didn't mean to
No,
step
go.
on your.
I can't see you because Peter always blocks you.
Some writing.
He's making notes.
He's writing down everything I just said.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There's your direction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take us online, we'll have a good time with that one.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Evidently.
We have a request of
Maybe they're carpool.
Jury Portsmouth 505 Inc. is owner for property located at 505 US Route 1 bypass. Requesting a one-year extension for the site plan approval and wetland conditional use permit for an electric vehicle charging station that was granted on July 17th, 2025.
First request?
Yes.
I make a motion, we vote to grant the one-year extension of the site plan and what, I'll add conditional use permit to July 17th, 2027.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It is extended. Look at the room. We're really,
Everyone left. I know our ratings have plummeted, haven't they?
nobody loves us anymore.
Nope, no love.
So, don't want to keep everybody late. There's a couple of things that aren't on the agenda, but I'm going to just sort of lump these things together and we can get into the specifics. We've talked to the HDC about having a joint meeting with respect to, I'm going to just call it the McIntyre project because that's what we all call it. I forget what it's called currently, but you all know what it is. So a joint meeting of boards is permitted. An applicant can make a request for a joint meeting, or we boards could make a request for a joint meeting. I talked to the chair directly, the HDC, she liked the idea, and it's been brought up to the applicant. The applicant has accepted the idea, so we would like to do that. Now, that will mean extra time, but it's a very big, complicated project, and I think it needs it. And it's an opportunity for us to, as a board, to have input at the early stages of this big project, and it's a big project. So,
I have an update on that. Just talking with the engineer for the project, they're hoping to have a work session with TAC in August. I don't think they anticipate going back to HDC in August, but maybe we would look to have that joint meeting in September as they further develop.
okay.
So that's kind of their timeline. They wanted to have a work session with TAC first before they go back to the HDC, and they're definitely open to having a joint meeting with both boards, but it maybe shooting for early September.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So we can definitely poll both bodies to see what dates work, but
Logistically, it'll be interesting. I know we've had a couple of workshops, but it'll just be a lot of people to have broad-based discussion.
And that will technically be a planning board meeting?
It's, by statute, I have to chair it because it's a planning board meeting with the other board present, yeah. Yes.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, there's been plenty of projects over my, whatever, how many years I've been on this board, that I would have wished we had known what the HDC was saying. While we're then seeing it after the fact and you're like, wait, well, that changed from pre-conceptual design. I really like that. Why did it go away? So to have them meet with TAC and get their first initial TAC issues sort of resolved and then get to all of us look at it at one time, I think it will be very helpful.
Great, yeah, I agree. I think I think some applicants have actually, I'm not suggesting this applicant has done this, but I've seen some applicants, what I'm going to say, game the system by going to one of the other board and then going, well, I can't make a change because I've been to that planning board and they're impossible, or you've been to HDC and they're
It's
impossible.
like fighting mom against dad.
Yeah.
So if they're both in the same room, you can't do that.
It's a lot more difficult.
We each know what was said to the other.
So also by statute, and you'll see it, this was in the packet, a revision to our rules. We have to have a provision in our rules that address joint meetings. So that is something we need to vote on tonight. It's really simple.
Pretty straightforward.
So that's in there.
Yeah, do you want to do that one first?
Shall we just do that?
yep, I can bring that up. So that was emailed out and then uploaded to the webpage.
It's just letter I get added,
Right.
and then everything else got renumbered.
We basically took another community,
Hampton or Northampton?
Northampton, I forget. We took another community and changed paragraph 2 slightly because they had a little bit hinky, but basically just tracked the statute. So it's just adding the red text to our rules.
I'd make a motion that we add the joint meetings and hearings section to our rules and procedures.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Done.
All right.
Site plan regulations, Peter's been working very hard to get our parking out of zoning and into site plan, And in the same steps, the few other things we've noticed, well, once you touch the document, try to clean it up a little bit where there are little typos here and there. Unfortunately, we have to have a public hearing to modify that one, so we don't, if anybody has a comment tonight, good time to bring it up? Yes.
Great, thank you. Very excited that this is coming forward. But when I started to look at it inside our site plan review regulations, I realized that it's still somewhat complex. And even though we can waive a lot of it, I'm just wondering if there's a way to make it slightly simpler and not quite so as in-depth as it is. Does that make sense? If we have so much ability to waive it, I'd almost personally rather just say, give us a demand, give us an engineering thing telling us how much you need based off of what you're building, right? Based off of where this building is and what you're going to do with it, how much parking do you need? That's what I want somebody to tell me each time.
Super simple.
Right.
Very trusting, aren't you?
Yeah, do you think that that is going to produce the same outcome every time?
No, because it'll be in different places.
Sure. Point in case West End Yard's coming back to us for more parking.
Right.
So if we had just gone that route and originally, we would have said yes, not even knowing what we didn't know. So
I'm just thinking, I'm not saying they're going to be right, but at least we have a basis to put it off of.
we already do.
I know, but it's still so in-depthly complicated.
Many communities have simpler parking requirements.
I just think it could be simplified a great deal.
Okay.
That's what I was kind of hoping for
Right, so initially, it was just like porting over.
It's just
what's in
taking everything
zoning.
from the
Right,
ordinance
right,
and putting
right.
into site plan,
So-
but I think we could make that even less complex. But that's
Yeah,
fine.
I don't know.
Okay, well,
Well, we can.
I was looking forward to talking to Peter about something, so now there's.
Yeah.
I just feel like it just still is, because it was so in-depth in the ordinance,
Right.
which I kind of
I
felt
don't
like it had to
disagree.
be. But now I feel like,
It's a good point, Beth, and since we don't have to do it tonight, let's
So,
give it some thought.
I don't mean to kill all your work,
No,
but
no.
I was just thinking, let's slash some of it.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point.
You are an attorney.
Really, I like more words, right?
Chairman, when you stated earlier that these decisions would require a public hearing, would it be different to a public hearing like this? Is it dedicated to, would it be a public hearing dedicated to these changes?
To site plan review, yeah.
It wouldn't be, it couldn't be, I mean, we are in a public hearing.
We have to have public,
This is public
Comment.
meeting. We have to notice it. We have to
We'll
notice
notice that
it.
we're
We have to
changing the
notice
site
it.
we have to
plan
have a
regs,
hearing.
so-
Our rules, no public hearing required.
Right, right.
And subdivision regulations, I forget, but site plan, it's statutory. We have to have a public hearing.
Thank you.
Yes, Bill?
So I've got a larger thought and a smaller thought. The smaller one is in the documents that were submitted. There was an inclusion of an off-street parking for visitors. And my understanding is that under the new state law, we cannot require extra spaces for off-street parking for visitors. That we can get one per unit, and that's it. So I would just ask
Right, so
Peter
we'll
to-
look at that and confirm whether or not that
Yeah.
we can do that.
The larger thing is we're apparently moving from to having more discretion over parking is the goal here. I think we need pretty clear guidelines if we're going to do that. If there's one problem or one subject area that's been problematic in my time here, it's been parking of different flavors. Almost continuously, there's an issue of parking, and we're going to have more as we expand housing. We're going to have more parking problems, particularly if we're not providing more parking spaces per unit. So I think, kind of contrary to what Beth is suggesting, I think we need clear guidelines if we're going to be waiving parking requirements sometimes and sometimes not.
I don't see it as a conflict. I think it's possible to make it simpler and specific. So I hear what you're saying. I hear what she's saying. I think it's the same. I think you're saying the same things differently, actually.
So for example, the Ledgewood property tonight, they only need, well, if we can still require visitor parking, they need 18 spaces.
Yep.
But they're proposing like 35.
Yeah, because they had 26
Because
underneath.
that's what they want to provide. And-
Yeah, the market should,
Right.
will drive them to some extent, to a large extent of what they really do.
There are reasons to have maximums, though, because some, especially commercial uses, will provide, way over provide parking.
Yeah, I don't want another Walmart.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
Context?
Nope, I don't want extra parking that never gets used.
There it is. Just didn't want,
we should do lots
didn't want the Walton family.
No. I like Walmart. I don't like the fact that we have an entire parking lot that nobody ever uses except maybe on Black Friday. I don't know. I'm never there, so.
Let's see how you pegged. Counter shopping.
So,
So
go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say that the other amendments that were proposed relate to,
So you want us to do a vote
Condition-
to adopt the non-parking related amendments?
well, no, we're just going to hold off on that.
Okay.
Relate to
Abutters?
abutter noticing.
Oh, yeah.
And just going with the state statute. And what's required now in the ordinance, specifically for the zoning board, is 300 feet from the property line. The proposal was to remove that and just go with what is required per statute. I will note that last fall, we implemented a agenda noticing system where you can sign up to get notification for any of the land use board, city council. I did check today, and we have 65 people that have signed up for planning, specifically for planning board notifications. So whenever we send out agendas, they get an email notification and text. So that's been successful, I think. I don't know the total number for all the land use boards, but I can get that information.
We want to be number one.
Yeah, we want the most. We want our ratings to
Right.
go up.
That's why nobody's here. They knew what was going on.
Right.
Peter, is that in compliance with state statute or just something we're doing?
Well, this is above what's required for state statute, and that's what we've done historically, is we have this 300-foot or 100-foot radius, but the statute only requires direct abutters or within 50 feet if you're diagonal.
The sign-up thing is not statutory. That's
No,
a
that
city
was-
bonus. That's just,
I believe that was a city council request.
Yeah. So if we change this in the ordinance, then we'll be able to go to just notifying the abutters per the statute. So that's going to reduce a lot of staff time, sending out abutter notifications. And, sometimes people are like, why did I get an abutters notice? I'm like 300 feet away.
and you can create a problem
Why
because
didn't
if you're not an abutter by law, but you got a notice as an abutter, now do you have standing to make an appeal?
Right.
That could be a mess. So,
I like it.
And then the other change on this would be to the conditional use permit section where we often have site plan approvals come in that have conditional use permits tied with them. And currently, a conditional use permit is only good for, it's good for a year, and then it can get one year extension, where the site plan could get multiple year extensions. The proposed language says that if you have a site plan in conjunction, a conditional use permit approved in conjunction with a site plan, then it can follow that same track, and you can get multiple year extensions with that conditional use permit, as long as you're doing the same for the site plan. And then the second paragraph talks about other conditional use permits that are not in conjunction with a site plan, that it allows the planning director to give the first extension up to 1 year, and then a subsequent extension up to, would go for a public hearing before the planning board for an additional year. So you could get 2 years instead of the current 1 year.
so they stay in sync.
They stay in sync. Right. Yep.
I like it.
So that would be for things like a wetland conditional use permit, or we have
Outdoor parking.
outdoor dining conditional use permits that are often not in conjunction with site plans. But if the wetland conditional use permit is in conjunction with a site plan, it would go under the first one.
With the site plan.
Right.
So these we can adopt tonight.
Well, these you can vote to send to council.
I'd make a motion, we vote to send those to council for first
Second.
reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
And speaking of wetlands, conditional use permits, there's also, not to be voted on tonight. Every meeting, we have wetlands conditional use permits. And as Bill has pointed out, and I've pointed out a couple of times, but I've tried not to focus on it recently, it's a tough fit for previously developed sites to fit the 6 criteria. So if you look at, it was included in the packet, and again, like the other one we were talking about, there's red text just picking up on typos and changes, like incorporating current reference materials that have changed since this was first adopted, things like that. Proposing to add a new section for previously developed sites, and staff's talking about how do we define previously developed sites, so there's some massaging that needs to take place, but if you could, we don't have to do it tonight, because we've got some long meetings coming up and I don't want to keep people late, but if you could look at those criteria and see if they make sense, and give your thoughts, send them email to Peter so that we can continue to advance this. The Conservation Commission is also looking at this section. They have comments everywhere except here, but they agree with the idea.
I was going to say, that was going to be my one question. Has it gone to Concom yet for their feedback?
No, I have their comments so far, and it's funny.
Nothing
that-
to do with the new stuff and everything to do with the old stuff.
Right. Right, but then they're like, but we need it for the, developed sites. How do we, so, hey, we got that. We got a draft on that. So we'll probably have a joint meeting with them before it goes to council on this. But in preparation for that, if everybody could look at this, we'll circulate, I think the Concom was very close to having their final comments
I think that we're on their amendments.
this week, maybe, or soon.
I think they met last.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll get their final comments, these final comments, so that the board
We'll
can,
incorporate it into one?
yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah. So the
I'll
board,
wait to read it again then.
okay,
And then we'll look to have a joint meeting
yeah.
with them.
With that. A work session?
It'll be
Yeah,
a
work session, yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Is there anything else?
I don't think we have anything else, do we?
I don't see.
Is there anything we need to do with this piece of paper we had on our desks?
That's just for your information, because it was addressed to you?
Oh, that is one other thing. So, I understand our fire chief has some concerns about road widths and access and whether or not to allow on-street parking. And it affects
Sage Lane.
Sage Lane. I can never get that.
I knew what you were trying to remember.
Yeah. But it also affects other things. So I'm going to talk with him because this is something I've worked on internationally and I would like to pick his brain and see where he's coming from. But it's a big topic. And we're living in a city that has some very tight streets that have worked very well for hundreds of years, literally. And streets that are too wide create safety problems with speeding vehicles, but we also don't want them to not be able to put out fires and get, ambulances in. So there's a tension there.
Our traffic engineer is going to collect some data to possibly do some traffic calming in the neighborhood. So more to come, at least in that direction in the meantime. It's the last report I got.
I know on Sage Lane, it came up when we were during the project. We talked about it out back, especially where that access to the trail was. So there may be, depending on what happens with the fire department, I may suggest a public hearing on that, but I'll let folks know. And other than that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.